Okay, we're on here. Before I start on the actual message, you'll also see that I put some information at the back on the table, and it's called Yom Teruah, the day of shofars or shouts, and there's 2-3 pages of information about Yom Teruah, when it's blown, why it's blown, and about where it's at, and about the other festivals as they come up. So that's an information sheet for you to take for you or for anybody else that you want to give it to. It's not doing any good sitting on the table. So feel free to pick up those. So this week I've entitled it Wakey, Wakey, Rise and Shine. It's Yom Teruah. It's basically an alarm clock. When the shofar blows, nobody sleeps. You just imagine in the hills with the valley down below, the echo must have been incredible. Can you imagine 300 of those all at the same time? At midnight, just after midnight. Very scary. What beat them? Sounds of the shofar and the light. Like I've said before, you turn around and it's no use shouting at the enemy, it's no use screaming at the enemy, it's no use telling them everything else like that. The best way to get rid of darkness is turn the light on. You try turn the light on, the darkness stays. No, never going to happen. If you turn the light on, the darkness will go. It's that simple. So how will we know for sure that the Mashiach, the Messiah, has returned? Well, it outlines it pretty well in there. First of all, it says, shofars will sound announcing his arrival. And in actual fact, another name for Yom Teruah is the days of awe. You remember when the Americans went into Iraq and they called their tactics shock and awe? Well, that was Jericho. They would have been beaten to it. The tactics had already been used. Jericho was destroyed by shock and awe. So shofars will sound, announcing his arrival, and all will see him as lightning flashes from east to west, lighting up the sky. When lightning happens, everybody sees it. There's not just a select audience, and it's like, well, you haven't got a ticket, so you can't see it. When lightning flashes, everybody sees it. And just as in Shoftim 7 or Judges, he will use his remnant like clay pots. We may be clay pots at the moment, but there's a light inside. There's a fire inside. And at the right moment when the shofar blows, the clay pots will be broken open and the light will shine. And it will terrify those who are at war with him. And there's a lot of people out there that don't realise that they're at war with him. Because they think because they join a certain organisation or a certain group of people that they have immunity. It's not the club you belong to. It's not. It's who you know. It's not. It's not where you go. It's who you know. Going to McDonald's doesn't make you a Big Mac. And when they become terrified, they'll turn on one another. That's what it says. That at the right time they will turn on one another. And he's used that tactic before. A lot of the groups are out there. The only thing they know how to do is to split and turn on one another. But Israel will say, Baruch haba b'shem Yahweh. Or blessed is he who comes in the name of the God of Abraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov. So we need to fully understand his Moedim, his holy convocations, his festivals, or Mikra, which means rehearsals. Every Shabbat is a Mikra. Every Shabbat is a rehearsal. It's just a little bit of a break where we can just practice being in his presence. especially the Shabbat. What is the Shabbat described as? The bride. When we introduce Shabbat, we introduce Shabbat like a bride. And as we begin to see and experience the prophetic truth that's revealed in the Moedim, then we start to understand a lot more. The ark was what symbolised Yahweh's presence with us the first time in the wilderness. And by the way, it was a wilderness, not a desert. It did have trees, it did have plants, especially when it rained. It did have animals. It wasn't just a desert the way you see a desert in Arabia and places like that. It was a wilderness. If you've ever been up on the hills near Waiuru on the desert road, that's a wilderness. That's not a desert. So his presence was hijacked by the Philistines for 7 months, until in the end they begged for mercy for their arrogance. As Yahweh destroyed the statues of their pagan deity, Dagon, the fish god. And by the way, Dagon, the fish god, is still celebrated today. They still wear the mitre hats, which is meant to represent the fish god, Dagon. And they inherited that when they inherited the mystery religion from the Babylonians and incorporated it in with the normal Roman worship. It's still celebrated by the popes, the cardinals and the bishops with their mitre headgear. And interestingly, it was letting loose rats that spread the plagues, that punished them, which is obviously why they made gold rats. As a result, they couldn't get it back over the border fast enough. And the remnants of Israel took it to Kiriath Yearim and left it in the house of Abinadab for 20 years. Tough for Israel, but a real blessing for Abinadab. During this time it was completely forgotten about and neglected by King Shaul and others. And during this time the Philistines constantly terrorised and persecuted Israel. Why? Because they came under that curse, because they weren't treating his presence properly. They weren't inviting him in. Until a young boy that everybody had discarded with a sling took him on. The same boy, David, was chosen as a future king who would shepherd Israel, who would rule in Jerusalem for 33 years by Yahweh. How do you train a king? You send him out there and tell him to look after sheep. How did Moshe get his training to lead them out of Egypt and into Israel? He sent him into the desert and taught him to be a shepherd. He'd learned how to be a king, he'd learned how to be a prince, but he knew nothing about leading people, so he had to go and learn to lead sheep. And if he could lead sheep, he could lead people. And this shepherd boy would rule in Jerusalem for 33 years under Yahweh's jurisdiction. And after Shaul's demise, David eventually obeyed his conviction to restore the ark where it belonged, in Jerusalem, the only place it belongs. But unfortunately, like a lot of people today, he didn't show respect, and he didn't appoint Yahweh's designated Levi'im to consecrate themselves and carry the ark as Yahweh had commanded himself. He just did what seemed like a good idea at the time. Instead, they treated the ark like a religious symbol to be put on display. And they stuck it on a cart like a common produce to be carted to market, pulled by a couple of oxen. As I say, I'm sure it seemed like a good practical idea at the time, by doing something for Yahweh instead of with Yahweh. And that's the issue that we have. We spend a lot of time trying to do things for Him and not doing things with Him. When we obey Him, we do things with Him. When we do things for Him, it's because it seems like a good idea to us. It's logical. It's flesh. You'd think after the debacle with the milk cows in the cart that he would have learned his lesson. Not stuck it on another cart. And what happened? One of the sons from the house that had been stored in, Uzzah, who was not a Levi, he was totally unconsecrated, stuck his hand out to steady the ark. It's like getting a car jack out to make sure that the aircraft carrier doesn't fall over. The ark didn't need anybody to steady it. The ark was his presence. And he suffered the consequences of his stupidity. Why? Because purity and sin don't mix. It's like oil and water. You cannot have both. And people think, I'll just go out and party all week, and then once a week I'll just come in and I'll be fine, I'll be all religious and it'll be good. No. Purity and sin do not mix. One of the two is going to give way. Even the Kohen Haggadol, who went into the Holy of Holies every year, wasn't allowed to touch the ark. And we know that they sent them in and they had bells around the bottom of their garment. Why did they have bells around the bottom of their garment? They also tied a piece of rope around his ankle. And as soon as they didn't hear the bells ringing anymore, they knew it was time to pull him out because he wasn't alive anymore. He'd obviously done something wrong. So as long as the bells were still tinkling, that was fine. The minute the bells stopped, they pulled him out feet first. Because they couldn't go in to get him. So because of that, and it all went wrong again, David got his nose out of joint and dumped it again. This time at the house of Obed-Edom, outside the city for 3 months. He basically threw a hissy fit. What a difference 3 months made. Abba took David through the basics, and he listened, and he was careful, and he read his Torah, and it caused him to be obedient and appoint the Levite to carry the ark on poles, dressed in full ritual linen garments, and he sacrificed every few steps. 6 the first time. And he danced as he showed proper respect and sounded the shofar to let Israel know that their King of Kings was on his way. It wasn't just some religious artifact. This was the King of Kings. He was the King, but this was the King of Kings. His presence was being ushered back into Jerusalem the way it deserved to be, with respect. He wasn't dissing him anymore. But just as many have always done and will continue to do, his wife Michal was filled with contempt for him. Why? Because as King Shaul's daughter, she was old money, she was part of the establishment, she was part of the in crowd, she was trendy. She was the Kardashian of her day. And she had an ego to match. I'm sure she took a lot of selfies of herself. And as a result of her disrespect, she remained completely barren, completely childless or fruitless. Just as those who look at us with contempt, when we usher in the King's presence, will suffer the same fate spiritually. They will look at us with contempt as we do what Abba's ordering us to do. And the fruit of that will be, they will be barren spiritually. Our answer to them is exactly the same as David's when they say, what do you think you're doing? I will celebrate in the presence of Yahweh, and I will make myself still more contemptible than that, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But the people that come up with me will respect me, and that's enough. I don't care whether you respect me. I care about the people who come up with me, and I care about Yahweh's opinion of me, not yours. So what had David done? He set up a tent, a mishkan, a tabernacle in Jerusalem to house the ark. And when we sing about raising up and restoring David's tent once more, this is what it's talking about. It's not about praise and worship, it's about restoring Yahweh's presence back where it belongs. In the centre of Jerusalem, in Israel, in our body as we worship. We need to restore His presence back with us again. It's not just some ancient religious artifact that we stick up on a wall, or we sing about, or we have badges around our necks, or I've told you the one before that it was a good job they didn't have the electric chair in those days. Otherwise people would be hanging around their necks. Crucifix is a bit lighter. Why would you celebrate a Roman torturous killing method by wearing it round your neck? He's not there anymore. He was only on the cross for a little while and then he was off it again. So why are they still celebrating him, still on it? We need to bring His presence back and restore it to His people. But it has to be done the right way. It has to be done Yahweh's way. So Chemdat Le'abim, or beloved, when people parade their counterfeit man-made outward symbols of His presence, just as the Philistine did along with those with the cart carrying the Ark of the Covenant, His covenant with Israel, they are denying His presence and His power and His anointing. And all they display is an outward appearance of His presence. And there are people all around the world that have the so-called arks. Ethiopia is full of arks. What is it? A piece of wood. Every little shrine in Ethiopia and places like that, they've got these little bits of wood with a bit of painting on. That's supposed to be the ark. All over the world people claim to have symbols. What do they call it? The Holy Grail. Most people don't even know what the Holy Grail is. Do you know what the Holy Grail is? It's the cup that He drank from, and it's the spear that pierced His side. And all over the world, there's all these different buildings, they all claim to have them. They all claim to have bits of the thing, and they have magical powers. And people can be healed just by looking at them. There's all of this religious symbolism and rubbish around the world. They're just outward signs of who He is, and they're not real. Like I said, when Roman Emperor Constantine, when his mother went and started cooked tours to Israel, she started the whole pilgrim thing. And she decided where all the sites were. And she decided some old woman came and dug up a piece of ground and there was a bit of wood there, and she told her that was a piece of the actual cross. And so that was split up into pieces and sent to different churches around the world, and they still now claim that they've got bits of the true Holy Cross in their sanctuaries. There are so many of them, you could have a whole forest. Must have been a huge cross. I don't think all the wood in New Zealand would make up the amount of wood that's stuck in buildings around the world. Bits of the true Holy Cross. They're just outward symbols. Doesn't mean anything. These people all know about Him, but do they know Him? That's the true test of any relationship. I may know about somebody, but do I know them? I know about people in Israel, but until I get there, I won't know them. I only know about them. I don't just want to know about them. I want to meet these people and get to know them. They focus on symbols and vague shadows of things to come, as described in Colossians. But the body is of the Messiah. Don't let anyone deny you the prize by insisting that you engage in self-mortification or angel worship. What are the two biggest things in the body at the moment? Well, supposed body, the counterfeit body, is angel worship and denying yourself. You can wear the hairbrush shirts, you can flog yourself, you can lay on beds of nails, you can walk on hot coals, you can do all of those things. It makes no difference. If you don't know Him, it's a waste of time. What's the thing they do for 40 days? Don't eat sweet things or... Lent, that's it, Lent. But they deny themselves something. Makes them feel very self-righteous. But it doesn't change a thing.
They don't give us 40 days and one thing they love.
Yes.
Like smoking.
Well, if they really gave up 40 days of the things they love, that means they give themselves up. I know they wouldn't take selfies for 40 days. How could they manage? They could give up the cell phone for 40 days. How would they live? They might miss something.
Turn the Wi-Fi off for 40 days.
Ooh. Doing it tough. So don't listen to people like that. These people are always going on and on and on about some visions they've had, and they vainly puff themselves up by their worldly outlook, and they fail to hold to the head from whom the whole body received its supply, being held together by its joints and ligaments as Yahweh makes it grow. If the joints and the ligaments don't join together and build each other up, how can He make the body grow? If everything's out of joint, how can He make it grow? It's our job to build up the ligaments and the joints and build them up in love and hold them together in unity. If the body's not together in unity, it's never going to grow. How do they recognise us? By our unconditional love of one another. When they see unity, when they see love of one another, in spite of behaviour, then they'll recognise us for who we say we are. By what we do, not by what we say. People are sick and tired of hearing it. They want to see it. That's basically people's attitude out there. And that's been my message right from the start. People are sick of hearing about it. They want to see it. In action. When they see it in action, then they'll believe it. And 3,000 will come in a single day. They retain only the empty shell of an outer form, otherwise known as religion, complete with its smells and bells and symbols and idols and pomp and ceremony, its rules and regulations, and the absolute control of hierarchical dictatorships. Any group that's hierarchical is not of Yahweh. That's not His way. He doesn't do things in a hierarchy. He does things where everybody is equal, but some are further ahead than others. He's the only one up there. He's the head. Everybody else is on the same level, equal in His sight, but some are further ahead in their journey than others. It doesn't make them better than the others. It just makes them further ahead. And the reason they're further ahead is because it's their job then to lead. And the ones behind them who are following them, they are supposed to have people following them. As Yoni was saying, his sentence to us is, follow me. And anybody who knows what Yeshua did for us can't deny the fact that He literally set the example. He didn't just turn around and say, right, I want all of you to sacrifice yourself and then you can have a relationship with me. He sent His Son to do it first. And then Yeshua, when He came down off the cross, said, follow me. He literally said that to everyone. He said, follow me. That's what leaders do. They lead. But the good news is that, again, just like the Pelishtim, all of their idols are going to fall flat on their face and be broken. There's going to be an earthquake in Rome. There is. There's going to be a physical earthquake in Rome, and all of the statues and all of the idols will fall down and break. You know, all of those statues around the Vatican, they're all pagan symbols. But when Constantine decided that Rome was going to follow this particular religion, this new religion that he founded, they knocked off all the old symbols of these pagan idols that were around like that, and they turned them into saints. And now the brain's not as fast as it should be, but basically Zeus and people like that. Zeus, I think, is Peter. So when you see Saint Peter up there, that's Zeus. When you see Saint so-and-so, it's one of the pagan symbols that they used to worship. They just changed the names.
Yes, if you look at the former seven wonders of the world, they were idols of, like say, Zeus, the Artemis, and most of them were actually destroyed by natural causes, like earthquakes.
That's right.
Like I think the statue of Zeus was struck by lightning.
Yes.
Ironically, was struck by lightning and burnt down.
Yes, exactly. But it'll happen again. He's not going to just sit by and ignore all of these pagan statues that people are bowing to and worshipping. All the little idols will fall down inside their churches. All these things will be challenged. They will be destroyed. But that's not our job. That's His. We're not here to judge. We're here to introduce people to Him. Any judging to be done, He'll do. Not our job. We're not His sheriffs. Lots of people want to be God's sheriff. They want the badge and they want the guns. No, we're not allowed to be His sheriff. He's the sheriff. He deals with that. We deal with relationship. The heavenly shofars will sound the alarm, and we will welcome Yahweh's ark back again where it belongs, at the centre of His body, His Mishkan, His tent, as we anticipate His return. Whether it's 3 months, 20 years or 2,000 years, it's still far too long for the ark to be neglected and stuck in dark, lifeless buildings, sidelined by countless generations out of neglect, apathy, disobedience and ignorance. It's time for the ark to be carried back to where it belongs. It's time for His presence to be ushered back in. It's been in the wrong place for far too long. Ignored. So who knows what year the bridegroom's coming? No? You're not going to make any money on the internet. You're not going to have a religious following if you don't know what year. No, of course we don't. Only Abba decides that. Only the Father decides when the bridegroom returns. Only He says and looks at the house that's been prepared for the bride. Done. Finished. Now you can go and get the bride. He makes that decision and no one else. Not even the Son. Even Yeshua doesn't know. He said that. He said, even I don't know the day or the hour. But do we know when He will come? Yes, we do. Because the word Torah tells us to so. We don't know what year He'll come. But we do know that He'll come sometime between Yom Teruah and Sukkot. The shofar will sound. Redemption, salvation will be dealt with, and then He'll come and dwell with us permanently. The time of His coming has been set. The year of His coming, no idea, not a clue. Because according to His word and His use of perpetual prophetic feasts, The shofar will sound and announce it. When? At Yom Teruah. 2. On the following Shabbat Shuvah, he will be crowned and acknowledged by all as King of Israel. Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat following Yom Teruah, is always called Shabbat Shuvah because it's known as the day when he will be crowned as King of Israel. Interesting, eh? And that's by all Jewish people, not just by Messianic believers. That's what Shabbat Shuvah is. It's the day of coronation. They know that this is the time that Messiah will come. The only thing we disagree on is that we know he's coming back the second time and they still think it's the first. But we agree on when he's coming back, or when he's coming. So he'll be crowned and acknowledged by who he is. Physically, he is the King of Israel. And he's also the King of Kings. Spiritually and physically, he's both. And 3, Yom Kippur, the Day of Judgment, for those whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. We don't have to worry about Yom Kippur. My name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life, he's told me so. I don't have to add up a list of all the bad things I've done this year and all the good things I've done this year, and if there's a discrepancy, go out and do as many good things as possible while I've still got time to make the good side of the list come out okay. You'll suddenly find a whole rush of people at Yom Kippur rushing out and giving away money and doing nice things for people. Why? Because they want their list to look better on the right hand side than the left hand side. It doesn't work that way. Yom Kippur, or the Day of Judgment, is only for those whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. In other words, those who have rebelled and rejected him. And then Sukkot, or booths, as he fulfills his promise to build a place for his future bride and then return when his Abba gives him permission to collect his Kiddushin, his betrothed. And then, after that, the betrothed becomes the bride. And she'll finally complete her nisuin, or elevation, and be married under the chuppah, the canopy. And when the bride and groom circle each other twice, 2,000 years? When they circle each other twice, and the groom says, Mekudeshet, or be sanctified with me, and the ketubah, this, the marriage covenant is read aloud. And new wine is consumed by both of them. Remember he said, I tell you, I will not drink this fruit of the vine again until the day I drink new wine with you in my Father's kingdom. Has he been to prepare a place for us? Yes, and he even tells us about it. It's called the New Jerusalem. And he says, it'll come down like a bride. It says, I'll show you the bride. And it shows you the New Jerusalem. What it's saying by that is not that the New Jerusalem is the bride. What it's saying is this is going to be the home of the new bride. This is the place he's gone to prepare for us. And he's bringing it back with him. And he describes it. It's not some big mansion that you'll get if you've done really good things. The joke about the taxi driver in New York. The bishop tries to go through the gates and he's given a set of roller skates. And he's saying, I thought I'd done enough to deserve more than a set of roller skates. And other people come through and they give them motorbikes and little cars and stuff like that. Anyway, this New York taxi driver comes through and a Rolls Royce turns up. And all the other guys complain and they say, what? He's a New York foul-mouthed taxi driver. Why did he get a Rolls Royce and we got all this other stuff? And he said, this guy has caused more people to pray than anybody else on earth. So the new wine comes out, and then the reception really begins. A full-on kosher Jewish wedding feast. Not a supper, not biscuits and cheese. This is going to be a full-on celebration, a full Jewish wedding feast. And they'll carry the bridegroom round on a chair, on his throne. There'll be dancing, there'll be eating. My kind of place. But it's for invited guests only. No wedding crashers. You have to be clothed in Nisuin garments as described in Matthew 22, where it says, the king came in and looked at the guests, and there's a man there who wasn't dressed appropriately for a wedding. And he asked him, friend, how did you get in here without wedding clothes? And the man was speechless. Why? Because he thought he was important. And he thought he'd get in and wouldn't need the wedding clothes. And there's a lot of people out there who think they're so important. I've done this for you, I've done that for you. But they aren't wearing wedding clothes. They haven't been dressed by him. They haven't been invited. Because he says to them, I never knew you. I knew about you, but I didn't know you. It works both ways. So the man was speechless. So the king said to his servants, bind him hand and foot and throw him outside into the dark, into that place where people will wail and grind their teeth. And if you haven't got any, teeth will be provided. As mine were last year. For many are invited, but few are chosen. And many will say, Lord, Lord, I built a ministry empire. I did famous exploits in your name. I trekked the jungles. I built hospitals. I had orphanages. And I claim to represent you and rule many in your name. And his answer will be, I never knew you. Because you carried out your agenda and not mine. You did what looked good and what you thought was good, but you didn't obey the things I told you. You didn't bring my presence in the way I told you to bring my presence in. We never had a one-to-one, heart-to-heart daily relationship. We never ever had quality time together. You never obeyed me. Because you didn't listen to me. How can you obey something if you don't listen? And then after that, 7 days are spent in seclusion. In the permanent chuppah, the home prepared by the bridegroom. And traditionally, the wedding chuppah is a talit. People hold up the poles, and a talit, this, gets draped over the top of it. Why? Because the tzitzit on it are a symbol of his presence. So basically, he covers us with his presence. He is our talit. I've got a big purple one that a Korean girl that was at the House of Prayer in Jerusalem gave us, and Pamela claimed it because it's purple. But if we ever have when we have weddings and we need the chuppah, that's what we use because it's massive, isn't it? It's quite big.
It's that you're a traditionalist and you like blue.
Oh no, I'm not a traditionalist. I'm going to have to repent. I've never been a traditionalist in my life. As long as I don't let it rule me. So traditionally the wedding chuppah is a talit representing Abba's covering, his authority and his anointing. And as Yeshua was born during Sukkot, and Brit Milad, or circumcised on the 8th day, 7 days later, Shmini Ateret, the 8th day of completion, will take place. It's a separate holy convocation. And when he returns at the same time, he will once again dwell with man. The first time he came was at Sukkot, was prophetic of when he would come again and dwell with man. But this time it will be in an imperishable tent, an eternal ark. The first body couldn't contain him. The tree couldn't retain him. But when he returns, it will sustain him fully as he rules and reigns and dwells with his creation forever. And that will start a final 1,000-year countdown before time itself runs out and eternity becomes the norm on earth. And again we will walk together in the garden of the new Gan Eden, the new Jerusalem. So don't be anxious when you hear of wars and rumours of wars. This isn't a time of worrying about the events of the end, but of joyful rejoicing about new beginnings as we prepare ourselves and others for his imminent return. So shalom, Kemdat Labi, beloved, shalom.